The afternoon sun beat down on Willowbrook Estates as I watched from my driveway. An ambulance sat at our community's main gate, lights flashing urgently, siren wailing. But the gate remained stubbornly closed. Through the wrought iron bars, I could see the paramedic in the driver's seat gesturing frantically at someone. That someone was Karen Fitzgerald, our HOA president, standing with her arms crossed and that familiar look of smug authority plastered across her face. "Ma'am, please, we need immediate access," the paramedic pleaded through his window. "This is a life-or-death situation." Karen shook her head firmly. "I don't care what you claim this is. You need proper authorization to enter Willowbrook Estates. Those are the rules. No exceptions." The paramedic's partner jumped out from the back of the ambulance. "Lady, we have a 57-year-old male in cardiac arrest. Every second counts here." "Then you should have thought of that before trying to bypass our security protocols," Karen replied with an icy tone. "I personally oversee all emergency access codes, and I wasn't notified of any scheduled emergency vehicles today." I started walking closer, my blood boiling. This wasn't the first time Karen had let her power go to her head, but blocking an ambulance was a new low even for her. "Listen carefully," the second paramedic said, his voice strained with urgency. "Robert Fitzgerald is dying in the back of this ambulance. We picked him up from the shopping center on Maple Street. He collapsed in the parking lot." The color drained from Karen's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Robert? My Robert," she whispered. The name hit her like a physical blow. Her hands shook as she fumbled for the gate override button on her key fob. What had been a display of petty authority transformed into pure panic. The gate began its painfully slow mechanical crawl open. Let me back up and explain how we got to this moment. I'm Marcus Chen, and I've lived in Willowbrook Estates for 12 years. It used to be a pleasant enough place until Karen Fitzgerald was elected HOA president 3 years ago. Since then, she'd turned our neighborhood into her personal kingdom. Karen enforced every rule with militant precision. Grass couldn't be more than 2.5 inches tall. Trash cans had to be brought in within 2 hours of pickup. Holiday decorations could only be displayed within specific date ranges. She even tried to regulate what colors we could paint our front doors, though that particular crusade failed after threatened legal action. But her obsession with the gate access was legendary. She'd changed the emergency codes 4 times in the past year, claiming it was to prevent unauthorized access by fake emergency vehicles. She insisted that all emergency services call her personal cell phone for pre-approval before responding to any 911 calls from our neighborhood. Most of us thought she was paranoid and controlling. Turns out, we had no idea how dangerous her power trip would become. The week before the ambulance incident, I'd watched her berate a new neighbor for having a moving truck arrive without scheduling it through her approved vendor list. She'd actually stood behind the truck for 20 minutes, preventing it from backing into the driveway until the poor family agreed to pay a $200 unauthorized vehicle fee. "This is about maintaining standards," she'd said with a self-satisfied smile. "If we don't enforce every rule, chaos follows." I'd tried reasoning with her once. "Karen, don't you think you're taking this a bit too seriously? These are our neighbors, not enemy combatants." She'd fixed me with her trademark glare. "That's exactly the kind of attitude that leads to property values plummeting, Marcus. Maybe you don't care about your investment, but some of us do." After that, I mostly kept my distance, documenting her worst excesses in case we ever built enough support to vote her out. I never imagined her behavior would lead to something this catastrophic. On that fateful Tuesday, Robert Fitzgerald had been running errands while Karen attended her weekly HOA compliance inspection walks. According to what I learned later, he'd felt chest pains while loading groceries into his car at the shopping center just outside our neighborhood. A Good Samaritan had called 911, and the ambulance arrived within minutes. But when they tried to transport him to our neighborhood's closer entrance for the fastest route to the hospital, they hit Karen's bureaucratic wall. The emergency override code she'd changed the previous week hadn't been updated in the system yet. Another one of her security improvements that she'd implemented without proper communication. As the gate finally opened wide enough for the ambulance to squeeze through, the paramedics wasted no time. The vehicle lurched forward, tires squealing. Karen stood frozen for a moment before running to her car, her designer heels clicking frantically on the pavement. I followed in my own vehicle, along with several other neighbors who'd witnessed the scene. By the time we reached the hospital, Karen was already in the emergency room, pacing like a caged animal. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared from tears. "They won't tell me anything," she said to no one in particular. "They just keep saying he's in critical condition." I wanted to feel sorry for her, but all I could think about was those wasted minutes at the gate. How she'd stood there, arms crossed, lecturing paramedics about proper protocols while her own husband fought for his life just feet away. The waiting room filled with neighbors as word spread through our community's group text. The same group text Karen had tried to control and monitor, insisting all messages go through her for approval first. Now it buzzed with outrage and disbelief. "She actually blocked the ambulance," typed Janet Morrison from Sycamore Lane. "For at least 5 minutes," confirmed David Park, who lived across from the gate. "I have security camera footage." After 3 agonizing hours, a doctor emerged. Robert would survive, barely. The delay had complicated his treatment, and he'd face a long recovery. If the ambulance had arrived even 5 minutes later, the outcome would have been very different. Karen collapsed into a chair, sobbing. But the neighborhood's sympathy was limited. Within hours, an emergency HOA meeting was called by Vice President Thomas Bradley. The community center was packed that evening. I'd never seen such attendance at an HOA meeting. Usually, Karen presided from the raised platform at the front, gavel in hand. Tonight, she sat in the regular chairs, looking small and defeated. Thomas Bradley called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the events of this afternoon and their implications for our community's safety." One by one, neighbors stood to speak. The stories poured out about years of Karen's overreach, her power trips, her creation of Byzantine rules that served no purpose except to feed her need for control. "She made my elderly mother wait in 100-degree heat because her visitor pass had expired while she was inside my house," said Patricia Williams. "She tried to fine me $500 because my daughter's Girl Scout cookie table was technically a commercial enterprise," added Bruce Kumar. But it was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, an emergency room physician who lived on Oak Court, who delivered the most damning testimony. What happened today was not just a mistake. It was the inevitable result of placing personal power above public safety. Those access codes exist for one reason: to save lives. By gatekeeping them, by making emergency services jump through hoops, Karen created a system designed to fail. And today, it nearly killed someone. Karen tried to defend herself, her voice shaking. "I was just trying to keep us safe from unauthorized access. You all elected me to maintain standards. We elected you to reasonable oversight, not to play God with people's lives," Thomas Bradley said firmly. "I motion for an immediate vote of no confidence in Karen Fitzgerald as HOA president." The vote was unanimous. Even Karen's usual allies couldn't defend blocking an ambulance. But the consequences didn't stop there. David Park's security footage made its way to local news. The story went viral about the HOA president who nearly killed her own husband with red tape. Within days, Karen faced more than just social humiliation. The State Emergency Services Department launched an investigation into interference with emergency medical services. The county prosecutor's office reviewed the case for potential criminal charges. 3 separate personal injury lawyers contacted Robert about potential lawsuits, not against the HOA, but against Karen personally for her role in creating and enforcing the dangerous access policies. I was there when she received the formal notice of charges. Reckless endangerment. Interference with emergency services. The prosecutor offered a plea deal about 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service specifically with emergency response organizations, and $50,000 in fines. Karen's hands trembled as she read the document. $50,000, she whispered. "But I was just following the rules I created." Her lawyer, a tired-looking man in a wrinkled suit, shook his head. "That's exactly the problem, Mrs. Fitzgerald. You created rules that endangered lives, then enforced them even in a life-or-death situation. The fact that it was your husband is irrelevant to the charges, though it certainly won't help with a jury if this goes to trial." She looked around the room at the neighbors who'd gathered to witness this moment, searching for sympathy that wasn't there. Her reign as the iron-fisted ruler of Willowbrook Estates had ended with the worst possible irony. The very control she'd wielded so ruthlessly had nearly cost her everything that actually mattered. "I'll take the plea," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the weight of those fines and community service hours crushing the last remnants of her HOA empire.